Okay, everyone. So this is an experiment um, in the spirit of supporting all of you in our community to stay healthy. We thought we would try doing this and in a way bring our Sunday offering to all of you wherever you are. And so we'll hold our usual format. Guessing a few more people will join us as we go. Oh, nice to see you, Olivier. Uh, and Yeah, I'll say more after the meditation. Um, but we may have many people who have been part of our sangha at different times who have moved away or are living overseas. Hi from New Zealand. Wonderful, Richard. So this is great. So let's sit together wherever you are under kind of whatever conditions you find yourself. It looked like there was a little bit of a delay for a moment. Um, so if we lose the stream during the meditation, you know what to do. You can just meditate. You don't need to hear me, and then hopefully I'll figure out how to bring us back online if that does happen. Uh, Here and now. All of this appearing within awareness. This is the functioning of your own awareness. So awareness includes all of the experience appearing through the senses, through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, uh, touching the outside of the body, the air on your skin. Awareness also includes all of inner experience. Anything that you're experiencing, of course, is appearing to you. So we can establish this even before we do what we call meditation. And so you can just rest here, awake and aware, with the flow of experience, with the eyes open or closed, letting everything appear and disappear, move and change, come and go as it will, all inner experience, outer experience, what we call inner and outer. And because it's so much the habit of mind for most of us, for most of you, to be lost in thought worlds all the time, it can be helpful before you have some kind of are established in this way of awareness to have an anchor, something, a place in a domain in the body or within the expanse of experience for you to rest your attention. So we often, as an anchor, use the sense of the whole body sitting or the felt sense of the body breathing. So being here, being awake, aware, and including in awareness the flow of sensation that comes with breathing. Not the body is breathing naturally. It's allowing for this soft flow of sensation. Feeling the touch of the air at the nostrils or the chest, gently expanding and softening, the belly rising and falling. Or feeling the breath through the whole body, the whole sense of the whole body breathing. So this breathing process within the body sitting can be like your home base, a home base for your attention, just helping you stay connected in the present and aware with the support of some aspect of experience that's not based in thinking, based in a story. And so we anchor the attention with the breathing, with the body sitting, and yet breathe with whatever appears in the field of experience. I'm not trying to have a particular experience or make anything happen, but breathing with the flow of what is happening, what is already happening, which includes thoughts when they appear, passing through the mind, scenes, images, and dialogue, words. It can include sensations in the body, pleasant or unpleasant. And of course, you may be breathing with some reaction or attitude towards what's happening, liking what's happening or not liking it, breathing with some impulse to do something or make something happen. So, whatever is appearing is fine, is welcome for our purposes. And yet, we're breathing with the moment by moment flow of experience. And the breathing, of course, is just a support for the uh, lucid wakefulness, the awareness which is already here, already functioning beautifully, perfectly, allowing everything we call experience to unfold. And in case you didn't hear me say it earlier, thinking and thoughts are perfectly appropriate content for meditation. Because you have a mind, thoughts will appear and they can be included. When they're visual thoughts, images, you can watch them. When they come in the form of words or dialogue, you can listen to them internally. This is the functioning of awareness. Not better or worse than anything else that's arising. And when you do find yourself or find that you have been lost in some thought world, as soon as you become aware of it, you're no longer lost. You're awake to what is appearing in the mind. You can watch it quietly or find the breathing again here in the midst of whatever else is happening. Whatever's arising for you is the perfect content for your meditation. One of the big obstacles is we're always searching for other content. Just letting what appears be the curriculum and meeting it with interest, with clarity, and wakefulness. And awareness, like a clear mirror, just reflects exactly what's appearing. Whenever thinking or evaluating or trying to make something happen arise, those too appear in the mirror like nature of awareness. So, in that sense, there's nothing that arises as experience that can't be included. And awareness, like a mirror, is not doesn't hang on to what appears. It's not defined by it, but it knows or reflects the condition of the moment, even as it arises and passes and moves and changes from moment to moment. If you get lost in thought worlds over and over again, each time is an opportunity to turn towards thinking, to observe it as a phenomenon, as experience. As human beings, we tend to live kind of completely dictated to by our thoughts and kind of living inside of them as if they were reality. So it's both powerful and radical to be able to watch your mind even for a few moments. These virtual worlds of thinking that can be witnessed in awareness. In this way, thoughts can be still be useful, but they don't need to be defining. Whenever you need a rest or a break, just coming back to the breathing and resting with the breathing. Just in the simplicity of breathing in and knowing it, and breathing out and knowing it. Breathing in, aware with breathing in, and breathing out, aware with breathing out. And staying awake, resting in awareness in the pause or transitions between breaths. So, welcome to all of you. It's I'm usually saying welcome, and we're sitting uh, in person, looking at each other, and now uh, I'm not looking at you, but I know you're there. And so, just to say a few things before we take our break, um, I'm glad we can gather like this. It felt important to me to um, make this step and to take this step of making this session virtual. Um, in part just because we have so many different members of our community and our sangha, and I wanted people to feel, all of you to feel fully included, and not having to debate whether to come or not, and also so that we could protect each other. I myself had a cold and have been sick in a way, and in the spirit of um, supporting each other's health. Uh, I felt like this was a good thing to do. And it's also, I'm sure it's going to have some interesting elements in that I even notice now that some of you are joining from far away. So that's wonderful. Um, Ordinarily, when we're about to break in the Sunday group, I say something about maintaining awareness during the break. And right now, I want to say something about you being awake and aware in your environment, because there is a way in which it's so easy for people to let the seemingly let the real thing be in some special meditation place. And so, in a way, this is a convenient setup for us to acknowledge that awareness is something you carry with you, your own beingness and presence, your own natural wakefulness. It's not any more present in some meditation location that has statues and stuff. It's fully functioning all the time wherever you are. It's just that we often aren't noticing it, or are too caught up in our thoughts and stories and agendas to notice that everything that's unfolding in experience is appearing within your own being. So, what a convenient way for us to acknowledge us fully together in being here. Um, so, we'll take a 5-minute break, a shorter break than usual, just so you can use the restroom and get some water or what have you. And so, we'll start back again at 7:45 Pacific time. Yeah, and we will more to come as we sit together. So see if, as you move into the break, if you can um, just stay in the lucid quality of awareness, noticing that this is unfolding, including what happens here and here. Okay. Enjoy. And also, if you have questions that you want to write for the time when we do Q&A, you can write them during the break just on the feed if you want to, or you can wait and do it later as we keep going. So thank you for being here. Uh, Thank you for practicing and staying aware, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Also, just to say during our break, if any of you want to write in and just say where you are and just let us know that you're on here, that's welcome too. It's always nice to know who's here. Um, no, Rachel and Max are on here. How wonderful from from Massachusetts. Sonali, wow. Okay, this is so fun. Christina, Trisha. Well, wonderful. Nice to see uh, so many of you. Your names on here, and and just to say, if you it would be good if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, so that when if we need to do more of these, and when we do more, you will get notifications about what we're up to. Well, so nice to hear from you. I could just read your comments, but I won't. Richard, I'm happy you can be part of this too from New Zealand. That's wonderful. Um, okay, so so ordinarily I'm looking at you. It's very different to be here looking at a screen. But let's just, I guess that's breaking the fourth wall or whatever we call it. Um, so I'm going to say a few things, and then it would be nice we can be in dialogue. This way, I'm interested in uh, knowing what is happening for you and what we want to practice with. Um, so it is an interesting time. There's a lot happening, and I've gotten a few emails from people asking if I would talk about fear, and I think I want to start. Um, I want to start talking a little bit about identification because I think this is It's so foundational to what we're doing. And in a way, we before we even talk about things like fear or strong states of mind, we want to have some degree of perspective. And part of what is so powerful about strong states is that when we are in the grips of them, uh, perspective is what we don't have. We we can be run by any strong state that is not um, received in awareness. Now, strong states aren't unuseful. They can be very powerful and important, and fear also is not a negative emotion. It's not a negative state of mind. It, of course, can be destructive if we let it run us, but as information, it can be very important. So, foundationally, um, I want to begin talking about identification. Awareness is functioning. What is appearing to you right now, even though they may be a familiar environment that you're in, it is appearing to you. All the outer world is um, manifesting through something that is here foundationally, your own being, your own presence and awareness. It's just so easy to say, this is outside, this is the world out there, and I'm here. I'm this little person in here. But from the standpoint of awareness, if we really notice and pay close attention, you notice, oh no, this outer world appears, and this inner world appears also. It's just usually we're identified with what's appearing here. This is like, oh, this is me, this stuff, and I'm not witnessing it appear. And all that out there is not me. And sometimes we're aware of witnessing it appearing, and sometimes we just say this is life happening. But the world is not just happening, you're seeing it. And all of the content that's happening in here is also appearing. It's appearing when we allow ourselves to notice. It was already appearing anyway. And that's that very subtle shift from just experiencing the content to inhabiting the wakefulness, to inhabiting awareness, which is the ground of experience, the ground and the function of experience. So there is something here which we can call transcendent in the sense that it transcends the content world, the object world, and yet it allows for it, it includes it, it manifests it. And the reason I want to talk about identification is because perspective comes from inhabiting this beingness. That's what we can call perspective. Because we have perspective on what's arising, we see it as experience. When what's arising is not seen as experience, it is the shaper of experience. So maybe I should say that again. When what is arising is not seen or witnessed, known through awareness as experience, which it is, our fear, or if it comes from what we say the outside or one that occurs to us ourselves, when that is seen as experience, it is not inherently shaping. It's just part. It's more information are seeing, and that's why the cultivation, or cultivation is even the wrong word. That's why the inhabiting of this wakefulness, right, the recognition of it and the abiding as it is so important all the time. And this is habitual and patterned, and actually is not uh, kind of a helpful um, um, piece of information. So in times like now, right, and I'm not going to talk about the coronavirus in some kind of way as if I know what's happening, because I don't. Although I've had some interesting conversations with people who work in public health and have worked in public health, which is part of why fears don't become completely shaping. Yeah? They can be included, and they can be information, and they can be used, but they don't become in charge or primary. And in this way, also, we can then be of more use to each other, not be in panic, but be in a kind of wise relationship to what's unfolding. Uh, and you know, moment by moment level, right? Because this is something that uh, changes from moment to moment. It's not like just from day to day. You can know that uh, the shift from inhabiting wakefulness, which is not that it always feels spacious and vast, but it allows what's appearing to be experienced as to be known as experience. We know that. We can know that here and now. And also, we know when that is not the case, when we have kind of gotten pulled into or identified with what's arising, and we lose that sense of uh, lucid wakefulness that knows what's unfolding, even if what's unfolding is a scary dream or some thought that's very concerning. It's very different to be knowing it. Yeah? Not knowing it intellectually. Oh yeah, I'm thinking about this. That's not that helpful. That's only very minimally helpful. Yeah? But knowing it in real time from what? From beingness, from awareness, from wakefulness itself, your own nature. Now, it's important to say, because this is kind of confusing for people sometimes when they hear teachings. They're like, awareness, wakefulness, beingness itself. Where is it? Well, I'm going to go look. I got to go. I want to find that thing Will's talking about. I'm going to be aware of awareness. Right? And that is a frustrating thing, because we are used to being aware of objects, and we can be aware of objects. But awareness, you can't be aware of in the same way. Yeah, it's not an object that you can witness in the same way. If there's an object you're witnessing that you think is awareness, that's not it. Awareness is allowing you to experience what's here, but it's not something you will see. And the metaphor that I was giving, I think even last week or recently at least, was you don't see your own eyes, but you're seeing through them. Right? So it's important not to go on some, or actually, if you go on a wild goose chase looking for awareness as like a thing, and actually that can be useful too, because not finding it is very useful. Then you relax a little bit, and you just, maybe for a moment, you'll just let go of the search and just be as you are. Yeah? So useful if you go looking for it, but also not that necessary. Right? In a way, that's the easiest thing in the world, because awareness is already functioning. But of course, because of our very strong habit patterns, and it can be not the most straightforward thing. And also because we tend to be very scared of a lot of our experience, as much as we've spent so much of a lifetime not looking, yeah, not learning how to be with what's here. So that can be quite daunting. So it's important to talk about both how easy it is to give you inspire you in a way to notice, but also to acknowledge how challenging it is, so that you don't feel like, hey, what the hell? What's wrong with me that I can't, that this feels so hard or difficult, or that my mind is so out of control that I don't, I feel so in it. I have just have like moments of noticing that this is appearing, like these moments occasionally. Right? So that habit patterning is very uh, old. It's been with you a long time. And so it's important to be humble as we approach this practice, and to have simultaneously a kind of a long view and an understanding that it's right here, right now. In the sense, in terms of the nature of awareness, there's nowhere to get to. And your awareness doesn't improve. It's already inclusive. Right? So, so let it include what's happening. As soon as there's a view you hold that you don't include, you will narrow into that view and it will shape what you see. You can have a view and let it appear, and you can still decide, like, oh, that seems like a useful view for now. It seems like the best view I can hold at the given time with the information I have. It's a very different relationship to that view. And so, speaking now to kind of transition a little bit and to talk a little bit about fear, just because some of you were asking about it. Fear is just another strong emotion, strong state that is so important to include. Right? It's important to include because fear can be completely life shaping, and so many of us know that. Right? And fear is ethically neutral. Fear is not, again, not good or bad. If you didn't have fear, just in terms of evolution and natural selection, you would have been in trouble and you would continue to be in trouble. Right? So fear is useful and important. And yet, it can be shaping and limiting in huge ways. And it can also lead to tremendous projection and othering, as we know. When we are afraid, it's easy to see others as threatening or more threatening than they are. That's kind of important. Uh, so again, take your fear as information, include it in awareness, but don't let it shape. Yeah, like, so just even knowing about the history of various outbreaks and things like that, it can bring out, because of the fear, bring out the worst in people. Right? Bring out very self-centered behavior or very othering behavior. It can bring out xenophobia and racism and all kinds of ugly, ugly things, and has historically. Right? So it's very important to see that. Yeah, to see those ideas or thoughts or impulses arise in you and include them, to practice with them. Yeah? So that we can also support each other in our community. Yeah, and rather than getting really tight and small, which is the least useful thing to do in a crisis. Right? When you are tight and small and narrow and clenched, you're at your least clear. Right? And in that sense, you're least adaptive. So, so it's important at some point, again, to listen to fear. If you just dismiss your fears, you might not pay attention to things that are actually dangerous. Right? And so, for example, even things like now, people are all trying to do these important behaviors in a time like this, like washing your hands and not touching your face. And then also, very interestingly, I think, things that are hard for us socially, like not shaking hands or hugging. Right? And again, this might depend more on where you are in the world at this time, but still, I think, useful to talk about. Right? It's a wonderful place and a useful place to practice, right? And it's not that it's wonderful to practice like, oh, how good that this is happening. Not at all. But where you are and the conditions you're in are the place to practice, feel good about in the time of challenge or crisis. So even things like this of like, you know, do you have the inner fortitude to not shake somebody's hand or hug them if you're not feeling well? That takes actually practice to not do the thing that's socially easy. Yeah, that takes some awareness and wakefulness and actually capacity to be with the discomfort. I think that's a very interesting place of practice. Or even things like, staying home and not doing, if you're not feeling well, and not going out and about as an active job. So when there are things happening in the environment that are genuinely dangerous, yeah, and then again, that's true a fair amount of the time in a human life. There are things that are actually dangerous or important to take into consideration. It can be easy to then assume that whatever you're feeling in terms of fear is just completely natural and also justified. So sometimes we don't realize there's a kind of like percentage of how much we're kind of taking our fear and projecting it into the environment. It may be a lot. So there are times when most of the fear we're experiencing is not about what's happening in the environment. It's actually our conditioning, the things from the past or from our own history that we have become conditioned to fear, and then we are experiencing fear habitually, even when it's not in the environment. So that could be like mostly what's happening. Other times it might be very little of that, and mostly just this is appropriate to the moment. And sometimes and often it's a combination of the two. And so that's also important to include, to sort of really be present with the fear as an experience so that you can notice to some degree how much of it gets sucked out of the environment then. I think I've described an experience on retreat I had one time. This is just a clear example of this, but it's not like a unique experience. Just of having fear be saturating, the world feeling very scary where I was. I was just out in the woods, nothing particularly uh, dangerous to my knowledge, doing a self retreat in the woods. But at that point, for whatever reason, the psyche, I just experienced that everything is terrifying, felt very threatening. The trees, everything, very threatening. And in the moment, asking myself, like, where is this fear? And and sometimes in those moments, when you ask that question, where is it? You experience it where it is, which is here in this mind body stream. This is where the fear is. It's actually not out there. Yeah? And in that moment, you might experience some degree of it kind of sucking out of the environment and actually being located in you. So again, that may be some small percentage. Oh yeah, it's here, and yet I still see that, or it might feel like a lot of it. So important to practice with this now and all the time. Fear is a very primary state, and it can be again very shaping and limiting in ways that are can be very, as I said, life limiting. From the standpoint of awareness, fear is just an experience. It's just a state and an object in awareness like any other. Uh, doesn't have to be shaping. It can just be included. So what's our practice going to be? With this and with everything that is part of this mind body stream, will we include it? Will we make the kind of remember to notice this is appearing to what? Appearing to you, or whatever you are. Everything that you call me is also appearing, meaning you. Your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, your own body, that is appearing and being experienced by what? So this points to your nature, your underlying nature. So I think that's maybe all the words I will say. It's for now. Uh, I'm interested if you have topics you want to talk about. I noticed a lot of people saying hi on the comments, and I haven't looked to see if there are questions here. But I think I will, please, if you do have topics you want me to address, please write them in on the chat, and I will speak to them or attempt to speak to them. And in the meantime, see if you can notice what's happening for you, even as we engage this way, even as you look at what's appearing in terms of me appearing on the screen, if you're reading the list of comments and having responses and reactions to what I'm saying to us. That's what we're calling practice. Right? That's what we want you abiding in all the time. Okay? It's not that it becomes busy. Oh, there's so much happening. How am I going to notice it all? Actually, that kind of practice becomes very simple because there's very little for you to do in a way except to notice. So, a question from Jessica, from Jess. Can I talk about metabolizing feeling? I'll talk about it a little bit. So I use that term, metabolizing feeling. Uh, and again, I think of metabolizing as kind of like it's sort of a natural process when we have welcomed some feeling or a feeling state or some emotion, really welcomed it in awareness, let ourselves feel it in the body, make room for it. Metabolizing is just a word that's kind of like digestion. Right? Digestion is a natural process. It's not something you do. You don't say to you don't need. I guess you might say, I need to lay down and digest, but you don't say like, I'm going to go to work digesting now. Maybe you do, but that's not digestion is just happening, right? So similarly, when we are not welcoming the states that are appearing, including very strong feelings, it's a little bit like, well, I guess this is where the metaphor breaks down. Because even if you go do something else, you still digest. But um, a lot of times our emotions, they don't get digested. They don't sort of process through and get integrated. They just get pushed to the side. Right? They get pushed to the side, and so they kind of lurk there. And this is why we get so scared of our own states. Right? And so, in a way, the opposite of that is the welcoming, the making room. As you can say, feel it in your body, some state like fear, all the sensations that come with it, the energy of it, the vibration of it. You can notice the thoughts that come with it, the scenes that appear, the images, the worries, the plan. You can make room for all of that. And then, of course, if it's easy for people, um, if you don't have a lot of practice, it's easy to get lost in that stuff, in the thinking domain. So maybe I'd encourage you, uh, if the wakefulness isn't so stable, to come back to feeling it in the body. Yeah. And then these states, they can, in a way, digest. And that's maybe the best language I have for it. They kind of process through without you needing to process them. And sometimes you need to make more room than the body. Sort of like you let it fill the room, you let it fill the sky, or you let it fill the universe. So some of you have heard me talk like that before. And that's just you using a little mental. So that's what I'd say about metabolizing. You can think of it as digestion. And maybe where the metaphor does still work is sort of like if you eat a big meal, and then you go and do some like crazy workout or something, maybe you don't digest as well. I don't know. But again, actually, that metaphor breaks down there. But it does have that, play with it and see if you can notice that. See if you can notice that processing through that happens when there is a welcoming of the energies of it. And then you can notice the defending against it and soften that as well. Okay, what do we do when fear arises, especially if fear is not an uncommon feeling? Same thing. If it's not an uncommon feeling, meaning it's here a lot, then good. I would say if you're noticing that fear is here a lot, it means you're paying good attention. It means you're actually noticing. Because when you look at it closely, if you pay attention to your own mind, most of you will notice that fear is there as a sort of primary experience, just lurking a lot, right? And that's probably adaptive and kind of evolutionarily adaptive. As some people have been writing about recently in ways I think are interesting. Natural selection doesn't design you for happiness and ease. It defines you for, we're sort of designed for, succeeding at certain fitness tasks and getting genes in the next generation. So, being afraid all the time, that might not be unhelpful for that. So we want actually in practice to cut to the core of this, and the core of that fear is often just it's a fear of death. Yeah? It's actually not even a fear of death. It's a fear of an idea of death, because it's kind of hard to fear something you don't know what it is as an experience. But yeah, we fearing that kind of ego death or ego dissolution. So it's so important when fear is a state that's here. It's something you can practice with, and you're practicing in a way with that, uh, with a very important domain, right? Because to liberate yourself in a way from the tyranny of that ego dissolution fear or the fear of death, that is very, very liberating. Yeah. So, is it an oversimplification, failure, death, etc.? Wonderful. I think that's very related to what I was just talking about. Uh, you know, it's only an oversimplification if you make a story about it and then just relate to the story. But I think if you're staying in the open aliveness of your unfolding experience and you notice that kind of the fear lurking there, then you can practice with what's primary. That may shift a lot of these different things for you. It might shift. Once you get more comfortable with fear, you get much more comfortable with rejection, right? Because actually, rejection, you get to challenge some of these fears by living through them, right? So, like, oh, I'm getting more comfortable with fear. Maybe I'll risk getting rejected. And then, if you're lucky, you will get rejected. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice, huh, that hurt. And I'm still here. Wow. So that would be very useful. Failure the same way, right? If you're free to fail, you're free. You're free to try. You're free to do things and live. And we're so afraid of failure. I think there's, in a way, two layers to this fear. Not just of failure, but of a lot of things. One is the fear that we'll experience the thing, like failure or rejection, right? Or our idea of it. Oh, I'll experience that. I'm afraid of experiencing that. And the second layer is, and I won't be able to handle it. I think that's maybe the underlying fear or another layer of the fear. So that's what we want to challenge that. Oh, wow. You get to discover it did happen just like, and I could handle it. Amazing. So practice is beautiful in that way, right? You get to challenge some of these things that have been habitual and habitually shaping, habitually limiting. Just telling people to go through their fear doesn't usually work because they don't have, it's almost like they don't have the methodology for being with the state itself, right? Uh, so how do we not fear fear itself? As uh, one of our presidents once said, how? Well, we need to practice in this way. We need to take the methodology and use it. And I think it's wonderful. All of you could probably introspect right now and see all the ways that uh, certain kinds of habitual fears are preventing you from living in a full way. Right? I'm not talking about taking stupid risks. I'm talking about just like what you're writing about: fear of rejection, fear of failure, in a way that prevents you from uh, engaging, prevents you from trying, prevents you from kind of living. So great. Uh, please practice. Please practice with this stuff. It's so important. Um, uh, Also, when we are practicing, and this is actually an important piece, as we get more comfortable with fear and less bound by it in that way, we have become much freer to love. And because fear is often keeping us in the way. It's almost like in the way sometimes of us, like just being open with each other or just loving. That's kind of important, not just individually, but kind of collectively and for our world and for each other. Uh, so let's see. Can I talk about the relationship between fear and suffering? John, uh, well, if there's a refinement of what you're interested in, you could write that too. I'm not sure exactly what you're wanting to ask, but what comes to my mind is that fear doesn't have to be suffering. Fear is just a state in a way. It's sort of like information. And the suffering that comes out of fear is when the fear becomes like limiting in a way, or when we're afraid of it and trying to keep it at bay, because that's a sort of, well, it's true with any state we're experiencing. That creates an inner tension, which you could call suffering, like driving with the brake on, or just having this kind of like opposition to ourselves in a way, to our own experience, putting a block in there. So, and I guess this is true with all states. They're not inherently suffering, or they don't inherently cause mental suffering, especially emotions like that. But our relationship to them really needs to change. Because again, fear can be very useful information. If you don't, sometimes you have sort of deep intuitions about things that are not right, it's very important to listen to them. Sometimes that's the wisdom of the body in a way that your rational mind would be like way slow to catch up or might never get there. So again, I feel like the more aware you are in the present, the more you can read the signs of what's appearing. Oh, this is the kind of fear to listen to, or oh, this is the fear that I feel every time I'm about to do something new, right? And that's part of being human. Anytime you're in the unknown, you'll probably feel fear. Anytime in the meditation practice, I notice this too. Sometimes, anytime the territory changes, often fear is something that just, especially, when in the unfolding of practice, fear often arises. So it just becomes part of something. It's like, oh yeah, here's the fear that comes when it's unknown or unformed. But I think that's a wonderful thing to watch. Observe when fear is fearing, and it's okay, and when there's mental suffering in relationship to it. Even sometimes the mental suffering of like being identified with it, like, oh, I'm so afraid. If only I wasn't afraid. Yeah, because if you identify with fear like that and you make it like the story of you, it's very limiting. And anything you do that with is very limiting. Valentina from Argentina, and Karin, yeah, so nice to see you both. I'm so glad you're here and could join us. Uh, Bienvenidos. All right. Can you say more about inhabiting awareness versus trying to make awareness the object of awareness? And how come we struggle to remember, be awake to awareness if it's happening all the time? Wonderful. I'm just going to do one quick thing, and this might make a sound. Yeah. So nice to see the questions written like this. So you are inhabiting awareness, right? And it's in a way, sometimes these words are extra. We just have to, yeah, the words are imperfect and imprecise. Right? Uh, it's our habit to observe objects. We kind of are taught really only about the object world, right? Um, and then we think of ourselves as like the subject, but really the subject that we think of ourselves as is really also object stuff, right? It's I'm the subject, like me, Will. So from the standpoint of these kinds of teachings, the subject, it's like we want to notice the subjectivity that's experiencing all of this. There's no one there, you'll find, right? It's just, so that's what I mean by inhabiting awareness. It's really more like letting go of the attempt to see your own eyes, which is just like the doing, right? The activity. Now, at first, I want you to practice meditation. So I know you've been practicing for a while. This is like, this may not land for everyone. But just as you are looking through your eyes right now, not like you're behind them looking through them, but the world is appearing right here. Be with the feeling. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like even camping out somewhere as a watcher. It's just this. So that's the best I can do in terms of, at least for right now, um, in terms of, you know, not making it an object. You can't make it an object. That's not its. It won't. It's not of that nature. Yeah. And the reason, I think, this is the second part of your question. Why do we struggle to remember to be awake to awareness if it's happening all the time? Is well, I don't know what the actual reason is, but I'll tell you what I think about that. Right. Which is, we get very one is, we it's sort of like, whereas some people think it's an insight, basically it's an insight to notice that this is appearing. That's not something that you have as a kid. And sometimes people think like, oh, when I was a kid, I was so present, I was so here, I wasn't lost in my becoming activity or trying to get somewhere or in all my thoughts about everything, and I wasn't criticizing myself. And that's all true. You were really present in a different way. Yeah? But you were not recognizing the nature of awareness. You were not free in that way. You were not free from your own mind in the sense of witnessing it as an appearance. Right? So that's, in a way, a waking up that has to happen. Um, I hope this doesn't go too far beyond, but sometimes we just have to be told something and then we can notice it. Right? So sometimes people think, oh, I have to have some big experience or I have to have some huge meditative explosion to uh, understand what you're saying about awareness. But actually, that's not really true, because awareness is, its nature is already what it is. And all we're doing is just noticing it. Inhabiting it is just inhabiting the noticing. When you inhabit the notice, the qualities of that noticing just become more palpable. One place people get confused is they think of attention and awareness as the same thing. So you say, like, oh, my attention is moving and I'm moving my attention. But awareness is what can notice the intention to move the attention and the attention moving. It's happening within something. So sometimes you just need to hear somebody say that. Oh, this awareness is here all the time. When you're experiencing the body here, that's the functioning of it. Watch your doing moves, even the doing that we call meditating. All of that is appearing to what? If you look for it, you don't find it. If you look through it, everything is here. So that's what I'd say for now. And we've gotten habituated to something that is here as the ground of experience. And I never read this or heard this, but I think somebody gave a talk once talking about, like, what is water to a fish or something. It's a little like that, you know, what we're swimming in, we don't notice. And the big reason we don't notice it is because it's not an object. It's the subjectiveness, not subjective like a point of view, what's allowing it to be known. Yeah. And at its core, that's an objectless what? It's not even a thing. And yet it allows for all things. This is the territory of religion. This is what, in my view, what people are talking about. They talk about God, or the that which is in everything and allows, and yet allows everything to be itself, right? So that's you. That's pretty cool. All right. Um, yeah. So in a way, we could say it's because it's happening all the time that you forget to notice it, and it could also be just because no one has ever really taught us the importance of noticing it. We are only in the importance of objects and experiences. And that's why we're always in the domain of becoming, of trying to become something, to get somewhere, to attain something, to get more of stuff. And this is why well-being or peace or fulfillment, fullness, completeness is so elusive. It's elusive because we're always searching for it in the object world. We're always searching for it in the world of experience, and we're never resting in what's already complete. Again, resting is too dualistic. We're not, all of this stuff is happening. All right. Well, yeah, we can do a few more. Uh, are you suggesting that our fear of death, dissolution of ego, will ease by welcoming the fear versus pushing it away? Are you suggesting that fear of death and dissolution of ego will ease by welcoming the fear versus pushing it away? That's from Kim. Kim, I challenge you to find out. Try it and see if it's true. Uh, um, I guess I am suggesting that if you need encouragement. Uh, Now, the only thing I would say about that though is if you might welcome it a little bit and then be like, oh, the fear didn't go away. So that's a kind of an important piece is that there are degrees of welcoming. And the deepest kind of welcoming is when you're really okay with it. That's not something you can really do as an act of will, usually. So the welcoming is just to help give you the attitude. But awareness is the real welcomer because awareness is like the mirror, letting it be fully what it is. And so there might be a process of developing a relationship or getting used to these states. But yes, I am suggesting that when you are okay with this, uh, it will ease. That may seem like a linguistic trick, but I don't think it is. Um, So Trisha says, hi Trisha, thanks for the topic. It's very helpful to remember spaciousness versus contraction as a way of holding big feelings. Can I say more about this? The only thing I'd say is that I also sometimes use that word holding, and in psychological, Western psychological terms, that makes sense, and I even use that term. I guess the thing I'd say is that awareness is that it's not a holding like this. It's not actually like a holding. It's a holding like this, in the sense of like vast space or infinite space, right? And so, just an example of this again that I've probably, maybe you've heard me use before, but um, uh, you know, in an engine, like a car engine or something, there you have an explosion in the cylinder, which drives the piston, and because of the smallness of the cylinder and the size of the explosion, it drives, right? Uh, and so what we're doing, in a sense, is allowing the space where the explosion is happening to be bigger. Now, ordinarily, we're doing that psychically or psychologically. We're kind of tightening around what's happening. Oh, I can't feel this. Whoa, this is what will happen if I can't feel. We kind of tighten around it, and that kind of creates just the physics of it create big energy, small space, and that is ripe for either exploding. Exploding could look like actually exploding. It could be just like exploding into some kind of action, whether it's taking action or avoiding something. And yeah, so that's often, or just stuffing. That could be another kind of action, just stuffing it into a smaller space. And yeah. So as you've put around things, which allows for more room, then that energy of that explosion or fear or anger, whatever, it just has more room to work itself out. That could relate to the topic about metabolizing. Just it has room to kind of percolate and just dissipate in a way, naturally or healthily, without you just doing anything. And also without driving some kind of behavior, which is so often our states drive unskillful behavior or deluded behavior or harmful behavior in the world, whether it's directed at other people or actually just kind of directed at ourselves. So that's a place where that kind of spaciousness is so important, right? Again, so that the energies of life and of you have room to kind of like unfold, without getting boxed in and have to uh, drive our mind, our behavior, or our view. And yeah, so there's another piece here, which is that those energies, and this is where some of these metaphors break down. Those energies, uh, there's a lot of energy in them, and that energy becomes available when you can be okay with the juice, or you can kind of metabolize some of the energy that's there. And allowing for there to be space allows for the more of the metabolizing. Uh, okay. Um, any other questions or comments? Sage, hi Sage. Hey Will, wondering what your take is on loving kindness practices. Different teachers seem to emphasize it and others not so much. How necessary is this in your view? Okay. Uh, Sage, you want to get me in trouble? That's, I'm just joking. Uh, I don't know if you mean this, but I don't teach loving kindness as like a formal practice so much. Uh, though I know it can be very helpful to people, right? And the formal loving kindness practice, for those of you who don't know, involves um, and you kind of generate, you sort of see the good in them. It's a kind of like a cognitive practice almost. You see the good in them, and then you practice wishing them well, like may you be happy, and you also seeing their genuine wish to be happy, right? So there's a kind of constructed cultivation of an attitude. And I know that that can be very helpful to people. Even the construct of like sending oneself loving kindness can be helpful. Like people say, like, "Oh, may I be happy, may I be peaceful." I know that people can find that very helpful. Um, the way I tend to like to teach personally, I feel that awareness is loving inherently. So what to me, anything that welcomes things completely as they are, well, that's a good definition of love in my book, right? So the only way I would use sometimes the language of loving kindness is that when states arise or experiences arise, you can, as a way of just helping you find the right way or a more skillful way of relating to it, sometimes welcoming that, or even you could even say like, may you be happy, fear. That's just a way of helping you to welcome it, right? So the thing about loving kindness, the way it's constructed in that kind of relative practice that I can be problematic, I think, is that it kind of reinforces a view of self. So say, may I be happy, may I be peaceful. What are we talking about? you know, uh, I find it much more useful and more in line with the practice of insight and awareness, just to welcome all of our experience with kindness so we can discover that, hey, maybe we'll discover then the core. I'm not even who I thought I was. All these things I thought I am, I'm not those things. There's something here, welcoming it all or noticing it all. So that's the piece I'd say about loving kindness practice. Again, all kinds of practices can be helpful, just like so many different kinds of exercise can be helpful. So I'm not making a statement about whether loving kindness in that formal way is useful. I think it really can be. and I personally choose not to teach it that way, but um, to more just be in the attitude of welcoming and awareness. Yeah, I'm getting some messages from the person who's helping me with the live stream. So if you see me looking at my phone, that's why I'm doing that from time to time. Thank you for that, Sage. Hope that's hope that's useful. Oh, so you asked the last part is it necessary? I think the welcoming of experience or the witnessing of experience in its fullness is necessary. And if you can, and if that kind of language helps you to do that, then it can be very skillful. Please discuss three phases of sitting or formal meditation. So you've heard me talk about that, and this is a framework that my godfather Larry likes to use, and I think it's useful. It's just a way of dividing the unfolding into some phases, which I think are useful. The first phase is just kind of having a more exclusive attention with the breathing and letting everything else that's happening happen in the background. So it could be the breathing or the body sitting, some domain of attention. And that's to help you develop some stability in being here. Because all this stuff I'm saying about awareness is here all the time, everything's happening in it. For most people, they need a training. That's almost like you might get it for a moment, but you need still some training to help you be able to actualize that. So getting lost in thought and coming back again and again to feeling the body breathing in, breathing out, getting lost and coming back. It's very useful training to develop some capacity to be stably here with an unfolding experience with everything else happening around it. Phase two then is letting the breathing kind of be featured, but also breathing with the flow of experience, or letting the frame of the sitting body be here and yet be with the flow of experience. So it's sort of a both and. There's the support of the primary object and the unfolding of what's happening. That's a wonderful phase, you could say, but it's also just very useful. I have to scroll back to where we were. Yeah. And the third phase then is you let go of the kind of any kind of anchoring at all, and you're just resting as awareness with the unfolding of experience. Yeah. And that's something you may just be able to allow at times. And sometimes that will happen a little bit and you'll get very caught up. Then you can go back to phase two a little bit. Again, it's not some kind of linear progression, these are phases you can move in and out of and play with at different times. So that's a very basic thing about that. And I think you're bringing this up makes me realize I should put something on the website that has a description of those phases so that people can have something to reference, and I will do that. Um, uh, is there language to explain how to welcome a feeling fully as opposed to a bit if we don't understand it to begin with? I think a bit is fine. You don't need to welcome it fully. Welcome it a bit, and then maybe you could welcome it a bit more. Bit by bit is good. So I don't know how to pronounce the name, but Fooly Julie, Fooly Julie. Um, you wrote, you're having an odd experience when you meditate. You get increasingly present to and distracted by the fullness of your physical body. Any suggestion? Well, this is where I would want to ask you, maybe you can write this down, what you mean by the fullness of your physical body. Do you mean like a lot of feeling, or do you mean full of food? I think that would be helpful, and then for me to know, and that way I can. Do you mean there's a lot going on in your body? That would be helpful to know. Then I can respond to that. I'm sorry if I mispronounce. It's like if is it's your name or just a name for YouTube. Um, Maybe it's Julie. Anyway, I'd love to respond to that. If you could just say something about the fullness. Uh, Um, and then Richard, about loving kindness when sitting with trauma. Yes, I think that's right. And again, every answer I give here is going to be incomplete. And so the loving kindness can be very helpful. Again, that kind of like just beginning to have the attitude of friendliness toward your own body or toward your own experience. I think that can be very, very helpful. So I didn't mean to belittle the practice in that way. I think it actually that can be very useful in that domain specifically that you're talking about too. Okay, so Julie said physical heaviness, weight, bigness of organs, disproportionate to your actual weight. Yeah. So when you're practicing in a way and you're new to meditation, all kinds of weird physical things can happen. It's nothing. It's nothing dangerous you're describing. It's just like sometimes the body feels really heavy and full, and it can be a function of like concentration actually. So you want to just allow that and be with the fullness. Sometimes the body can feel very light, feel like you're floating up, and you kind of have to like sometimes you don't have to, but that happens. Just include it in awareness and keep practicing with it, and don't get too distracted by it in the sense of like thinking about what does it mean? Was this? Am I really? Am I going to fall through the floor? Just be with that feeling, and it will probably shift at some point, but it also doesn't need to. It's just just stay with the unfolding moment by moment. Thank you. Coven. Hi, Coven. When I feel stress or discomfort, I might use loving kindness to soothe myself or an abundance of meditation or cultivating joy. It feels like these transform my state of mind. Good. Trust your experience. But it also feels like it ignores whatever discomfort you're feeling by replacing it rather than sitting with it. And then how might I reconcile being with the discomfort and also transforming it rather than pushing it out through these practices? So the best use of loving kindness practices and all the relative practices is as supports, right? So support, sitting with it doesn't mean you always have to sit with everything. Some things might be too much for you to sit with at any given moment. So you touch into it and you get a little space, you touch into it again, and then you put your attention somewhere else in the body. There's so many skillful means. That can be called pendulating. You touch into something that sort of like feels overwhelming, and then you go back to a neutral place in the body, right? So the loving kindness phrases can and be rather than be in some kind of pattern of self-attack or something, to be in a pattern of like self-welcoming or kind of just an intention of kindness. So again, all of the skillful means are meant as skillful means in support of awareness. They're in support of you learning to get more comfortable with your experience. But just as in any kind of engagement, sometimes the most useful thing is to move away. And then you can move back at some point. Yeah. So, or it's to be with something at a distance. All of these are, again, skillful means. Yeah. So I think that's a useful way to think about it. You can also notice anytime you're using any meditative practice as a distancing in a way that feels unhelpful, you can use anything that way. Coming back to the breathing, ideas about non-attachment, the concept of impermanence. Oh, that doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt my feelings. Everything's impermanent anyway. You can use that kind of logic as a way to defend against experience. You can use loving kindness that way. Oh, I'm not going to pay attention at all. May I be happy? May I be happy? Or you can use it in a way that supports you being comfortable enough with yourself and being able to be here enough to start to be, even bit by bit, as somebody was saying, with your experience in little ways. So thank you for that, Kevin. Well, good. This is been nice being with you. I saw we had like 90 something people on the stream at a certain point, and um, I'm glad we could be together on this Sunday, and also in this way that is. Um, I love thinking about all of you in all of these different places right now, inhabiting your own beingness as you are, and just these like points of light around Berkeley and the East Bay and around the world, around the U.S. and around the world. You know, someone from Brazil wrote earlier, and New Zealand and Argentina, and so that's very heartening. And yeah, so maybe we'll close here. I think that's maybe an okay note to end on for this week. And as I said, I will. I'm just going to pay attention to how things unfold this week in terms of the news here, and I'll make a decision, before Friday or Saturday about what we'll do next week. But being on here with all of you makes me really want to commit to finding some way to stream the group. It's been hard for us. For those of you who don't know, it's been hard for us to stream because we haven't had Wi-Fi in the building. So, but I'm going to. It may not happen, in the next week or so, but I feel committed to figuring out how we can do that, so that those of you in far-flung places, which are not far-flung from your perspective, they're right at home, can be with us too. So that would be great. Again, if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, that will help us um, get the message to you when we do stream next. And let me just see. Yeah, oh yeah, and if you have any feedback that you want to give me, can help me make it better, help us improve it, that would be wonderful too. And you can write to me at that email address, wkzsangha at gmail, for now. That's the one I sent the email from. Okay, so let's sit together for a few moments. We'll dedicate the merit, and be on our way. So may each one of us, and in our own way, each of you in your own way, continue to look deeply into the nature of things and into the nature of your own experience. And to be curious about this looking, this knowing, that which is allowing all of this to appear and unfold. And may this clear wakefulness, this knowing, free us from our conditioned patterning, our limited and limiting ways of being, not only to benefit ourselves, but hopefully for the benefit of all beings everywhere. Our near ones and dear ones, our local communities, and all beings everywhere. Okay, thank you all so much. So heartening to be with you, to see your names on here, your friends, and all of you who I kind of recognize and remember, and some I haven't seen in a while, and some I get to see regularly. So wishing you all well, and I look forward to being with you soon. Uh, Stay here in your own natural wakefulness. We'll see you soon.